What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. We're going my core plays for week 18 of the NFL season on DraftKings and FanDuel. If you enjoy, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel for brand new. Let's dive right into it. And as always, if you like what you see on the screen behind me, it's available completely free for a week over my Patreon with their free week trials. If you like it, you can stay. If not, don't kick rocks. You're not going to hurt my feelings. But access to the projections that I use on DraftKings and FanDuel, optimizer, ownership projections, cheat sheets, going over cash games, tournaments, have the entire slate statted out. So if you use that for props, be my guest. And my Discord community, which is active 24/7. So again, if you want to check it out, link is down below. And we have NASCAR coming very soon. I realize this is the last week of the regular season. And then we have the playoffs and the Super Bowl, which I will be doing content for. But NASCAR in just like less than a month now with the Clash, we have a lot to be excited about. Those of you who know me know that NASCAR is my favorite sport by far. So cannot wait for that. But anyway, let's get into this dirty slate. It's week 18, so same old, same old. It's always going to be a bit messy. Trying to dig in on what teams actually have something to play for, because there's several teams that are not going to be going full out with their starters, like the Cleveland Browns, the 49ers, the Baltimore Ravens. They're already locked into their seeding, so they really have no reason to risk injury to their starters. Some teams are going to be a bit iffy here, like the Detroit Lions don't really have much to play for, because we have to assume the teams they need to lose are probably going to end up winning, so it's going to be a bit of a weird situation there. But overall, we really need to target teams that either have nothing to play for in the sense that they're not going to rest their starters because the season's already lost, and teams that have everything to play for, need to win and to get in or just to change their seeding. So there's two ways we can go about it. Also, targeting players on teams that are resting starters that are now going to be in a starting role compared to their bench role. They're way too cheap. We'll talk about that with the 49ers guys this week. So those are a couple things that we have to look at when we're trying to dissect who we should play this weekend. But we're going to start with the quarterback position, and up top we have the man Dak Prescott, $8,000 on DraftKings, $8,700 over on FanDuel. Draws the nut matchup versus the Washington Commanders. Now I do prefer Dallas at home in the Dome, but I don't really care where they are when they're facing Washington. Their defense is just so horrendous. 29.5 implied team total this week, 13.5 point favorites. And Dallas does have a bit something to play for here, because if they win, they can solidify their second seed, which is something I'm sure they're going to want to have heading into the playoffs. Obviously, you can't jump the 49ers, but second seed isn't so bad either. But they have the highest total on the entire week. The only concern would be is if this is a blowout and they get up big enough by like halftime of the third quarter, maybe they feel comfortable enough to rest their starters. But if they are blowing them out, it's probably because Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, all those guys already had big games anyway, so I'm not going to be too concerned about that. And it's just the best matchup in the world. They're allowing the second most points per game in the quarterback position, 270 passing yards, over 2 passing touchdowns. I guess I should say it's the second best matchup. But Tyrod Taylor gets that, and I can't really say he's quite on Dak Prescott or the Cowboys offense level. So no reason not to like Dak here. Him, CeeDee Lamb, Tony Pollard, I expect them to be very popular this weekend. Geno Smith, $6,100. Seattle's another team that is fighting for their lives for the playoffs. And they get a nice matchup on the road in Arizona, 47.5 point over-under on this game, 25 point implied team total, 2.5 point spread, so it is pretty close. And I do like targeting this game overall, especially for tournaments. 250 passing yards per game for Geno Smith. That really hasn't been that great of a season. Less than 1.5 passing touchdowns per game this year as well. But they are 24th versus quarterbacks, and the stacks are very easy with Geno. You have Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, JSN. You can run it back with guys like Trey McBride, James Conner. Don't really care, maybe one of the cheap wide receivers. That's an option as well with Marquise Brown on the IR, but very easy to stack that game up. And it does have the highest total of the entire week. Jake Browning of the Cincinnati Bengals. No T. Higgins this week, but he's going to get Jamar Chase, 22.25 implied team total. And Cleveland, they are resting starters this week. So Cincinnati's playing at home, so it should be a bit of an easier matchup than what it looks like on paper. Because you know that Cleveland defense has been very tough this season, especially versus the pass, as they're allowing the fourth fewest points per game. But Browning has been productive when he's been starting this year. 8.1 yards per attempt, 70% completion percentage. And he's had some rushing touchdowns mixed in there as well. But I just don't hate the price point for playing at home, and it should be against a lot of the Cleveland backups. Tyrod Taylor, $5,300. He was great last week for the price point. Gets another great matchup here versus the Philadelphia Eagles. I realize it's a very low implied team total here at 18. They are playing at home, though, 5.5 point dogs. And the Eagles defense is just so bad versus the pass. 265 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns per game, allowing the most points per game to the quarterback position this year. So I don't hate Tyrod Taylor at this very cheap price point. But if I'm going cheap, I do prefer Nick Mullins here at $5,100. He's going to feed our families once again. I believe it was just 2 weeks ago where he faced Detroit on Christmas Eve. I played him a ton. It looked like a very, very bad start for me. I was like, well, this day is finished. I ended up finishing the day great. Had a big drive with him and Justin Jefferson right before halftime. I believe he ended the game over 400 passing yards, multiple passing touchdowns. I ended up getting first place in a single entry with Nick Mullins on the Superflex over on FanDuel. I believe I paired that up with Might have been Brock Purdy. No, it couldn't have been because he got destroyed on Christmas. So I forget what the other stacking option was. I actually think it was Baker and Mike Evans. Either way, Nick Mullins, I'm in again. Same matchup versus Detroit. They're not home. They're on the road, but it's in a dome, so I don't really have any concern about that. So Mullins, Jefferson stacks, they are back on the menu once again because Detroit has been terrible versus the pass this year. Pretty good run defense, allowing the 4th most points per game to the quarterback position. All right, so heading over to our lineup. Disclaimer, do not copy and paste lineups you see on YouTube. That's a great way to lose money because I don't play these lineups just straight off of what I'm playing. I am simply going through a process that I use every single week for my single entry / 3 max type builds where I'm going to pick a quarterback. I'm going to pair him up with potentially two guys. If it's a rushing quarterback, I might just do one. And then I try to find a run back option. Not a complete necessary thing to do, so I might not even do it in this video, especially if I go with the Vikings, because I'm not sure what the lines are going to do with starters, depending on how the game is going. So, bit of a TBT kind of thing, but it's something I do often, but not a must. Let's get to it here. And really, I have two favorite quarterbacks. That's going to be Dak Prescott or Nick Mullins this week. I mean, the other guys I talked about are fine. Geno Smith, Jake Browning, Tyrod Taylor. But let's go all the way down here. Nick Mullins, he's too cheap, $5,100. I realized he did not start last week, but ended up getting into the second half because Jaron Hall is terrible. But we played him versus Detroit a couple of weeks ago in a very similar situation. I think at the same exact price point. So if I liked him then, no reason not to like him once again. Let's go with Nick Mullins. We're going to play Justin Jefferson with them. We'll move on to running backs. And we have a decent amount of options this week. Obviously, the heavy chalk is going to be Jordan Mason down there at $4,600. No Christian McCaffrey, but let's stay in order here. Go top with Rashad White, $7,600. Tampa Bay, they win. They are in the playoffs, so they have everything to play for here. And it's kind of tough to pass on Carolina, but it's pretty easy to run on them. They're currently 28th versus running backs, allowing 110 rushing yards and 1.3 rushing touchdowns per game. And Rashad White is just one of the most consistent running backs in the NFL. He gets a lot of volume, 20 opportunities per game, 12.5% target share, over 4 targets per game, and over 15 carries. So he's always got a threat for being right around 100 yards, a crack at the end zone, and a couple of catches, which keeps him as a super safe option each and every single week. He's a bit expensive though, but I think he is worth the price point if you do have the money for him. Tony Pollard, $6,500. If you just want to throw in all the Cowboys, you can this week. I do understand that. Their defense is just absolute garbage. They have the highest implied team total of the week, 13.5-point favorites. They're not playing at home, which I would prefer out of them, but I'm not going to complain too much here. And Pollard, he too gets close to 20 opportunities per game, 12.5% target share, 4 targets, and nearly 15 carries. Honestly, very similar numbers here to Rashad White. You get a $1,000 discount, and you are pretty much getting the best offense of the week. And the Commanders are 27th versus running backs. Aaron Jones, no A.J. Dillon this week, $6,300. So he's going to be the main back here. Yes, Patrick Taylor does exist, but the Packers are another team that does need to win to get into the playoffs. So I don't really have any reason not to like the RB1 on this team at $6,300. James Conner, $6,100. Cardinals obviously aren't really playing for anything, but he should get plenty of volume. This is a good matchup versus Seattle. They're currently allowing the 3rd most points per game to the running back position, and we know James Conner will get a ton of work. And honestly, he's been kind of efficient this year, nearly at 5 yards per carry, even though this offense obviously is pretty ugly, but we should see 15 to 20 touches here for James Conner, at least 15, 20 opportunities, which I would take all day at $6,100. Zamir White, if Josh Jacobs happens to be out once again, $6,000. We know he's going to get a ton of work on the ground, all the carries he can handle, and the Denver Broncos are currently on the 2nd most points per game, the running back position. So this would purely just be a volume play here out of Zamir White. And then we have Zeke here versus the New York Jets, who are a run funnel defense. No Stevenson once again, so he's just going to get the bulk of the work. And he gets plenty of checkdowns as well. The Jets are currently 26th versus running backs, allowing over 100 rushing yards per game, but we're just playing him because of the volume that he will be able to handle. And Jordan Mason, he is your free square of the week. No CMC. Elijah Mitchell is currently questionable, but even that, I still think Jordan Mason is going to be the back that we want in this offense. The resting starters this week, and while he barely has much volume, so you can't really look at the efficiency too much, he's at 5 yards per carry in the season. Keep in mind, though, all the starters are going to be resting. No Brock Purdy this week. We're probably going to see Ronnie Bell, Chris Conley, those kind of guys on the outside for the 49ers. So don't expect Jordan Mason in a role where it's the normal 49ers offense, but still at $4,600 in the Kyle Shanahan system. If we're going to get 15 plus opportunities here, you have to take it at $4,600. Plus the Rams, they're another team that's not going to be going full throttle this week. They're resting starters as well. So it's going to be kind of evened out. Moving back over to our build here, I think I'm just going to have to go cheap at running back because the wide receiver position looks pretty juicy this week. I love CeeDee Lamb. As you can see, I don't have Dak Prescott, and I'm probably not going to go with Pollard here. So I want a piece of that 30-point implied team total offense. So it's probably going to have to be Lamb. If I'm playing Jefferson, about $18,000 tied up in those two receivers. So we're going to have to go cheap here. I like James Conner a lot. I believe he's only $6,100. If we have to change it at the end, I am not against it, but he's just one of the guys that does pop out to me. I do believe the projections like him quite a bit as well. And then we have Jordan Mason down here. I believe he is $4,600. It's going to save us a ton of salary. We still have nearly $6,000 left after our 2 running backs and quarterbacks. So we have plenty of money to spend, and it's going to be coming up pretty quick. And always the fun part, we have wide receivers. And like I said, I am probably going to try to spend up for CeeDee Lamb and Justin Jefferson in most cases this week. So I'm going to be spending down at running back. If I don't have Dak Prescott, I'm spending down at quarterback. Tight end's going to probably have to be cheap as well, but I'm fine with it this week because I think roster construction looks good with those type of builds. Now, keep in mind, there's always so many wide receivers you can play every single week. Honestly, I could add more on here, but it all comes down to the quarterbacks that you are playing. So since I have Nick Mullins, Justin Jefferson is the first place I go. As much as I love CeeDee Lamb, I have to prioritize Justin Jefferson because Nick Mullins is not going to go off this week unless Justin Jefferson does, or at least one of his wide receivers. Jordan Addison, you can play him. Brandon Powell, KJ Osborne, that's when you're getting a little bit weird. But I would say at very least, you need at least one of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. But if you're looking for my favorite cash game wide receivers, CD, Justin Jefferson, I would try to fit in both of those guys. So that means we're going to have to spend down a bit. Christian Kirk, if he happens to play this week, DraftKings they messed it up. I don't know if they just forgot that he could come back this week. He's currently listed as questionable. He's got it in a limited practice. If he happens to be good to go, this is a game that Jacksonville needs to win. So if he is in at $3,000, this is a guy that's averaging 6.5 targets per game this year, a 21% target share, close to 5 catches, and 65 receiving yards. So he'll be at full health. Not really sure. We also know Trevor Lawrence is also a bit banged up. But at $3,000, I mean, I would rather play Christian Kirk with the playoffs on the line versus a good matchup versus Tennessee. They have struggled versus wide receivers over a guy like Ronnie Bell and Chris Conley for a couple $100 more. So yeah, if Christian Kirk, he is in. I mean, you just have to play him in cash games at $3,000. You can play him in tournaments too. He just completely unlocks your lineup. Him and Jordan Mason, you pretty much have all the salary that you want. I currently have him projected in. I believe I'm right around 12 points, which take that by $3,000. That is 4x value. If you happen to go Tyrod Taylor route, you have cheap wide receivers in Wan'Dale Robinson, Darius Slayton. I'm fine with that. We know the Darius Slayton, Tyrod Taylor stack worked out quite nicely last week. If you were going with Geno Smith, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. I also saw a tweet that Tyler Lockett happens to have a very strong history of scoring in the last week of the season. Not that that's a reason to play anybody. I just thought that was interesting. Demario Douglas is another fine, cheap play if you want, just because he's going to get the volume, but I hate the matchup versus the Jets. And DeAndre Hopkins, if you're going mid-range, good matchup versus Jacksonville. But outside of that, for me, a lot of my builds will probably have CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, and then just one of those cheap guys, which will most likely be a guy like Christian Kirk. Moving over to our build, I said what I'm going to do about 500 times, so no surprise here. But let's just jam in Justin Jefferson at first. Then we'll go with CeeDee Lamb. And we're going to need a cheap wide receiver at this point because we have just over $4,000, which you factor in a cheap defense, probably a cheap tight end because we can't play TJ Hawkinson because he's dead. So it looks like we're going to have to go cheap here. And I like Christian Kirk at $3,000. I'm probably not going to be able to find him here unless I search for his name. But if he happens to play, I mean, he is at $3,000. That is a free square. Even if it happened to be a bit of a pitch count, I would be fine with it as well. Moving on to tight ends. I do want to mention that Travis Kelce there's no official designation on him yet. Their Chiefs are resting starters. Isaiah Pacheco is currently questionable as well. Patrick Mahomes is not going to be playing. My assumption is that Andy Reid lets Travis Kelce play until he hits 1,000 yards, which I believe he needs 16 or 17 yards right around there to hit it. And I would assume he is probably not going to play anymore because they're locked in. So that would mean that we have Noah Gray down there at $2,500, who will probably play the rest of the snaps. He'll be the main tight end here, so $2,500. Yes, you have a very cheap tight end that will be viable for sure. Trey McBride, all these guys are fine. Just really comes down to the roster construction. I'm going to go cheap. Since I have Nick Mullins, Johnny Mundit, that's how you pronounce his name, $3,000. No TJ Hawkinson. He had 7 targets last week. Now, keep in mind, Jaron Hall, Nick Mullins did split the snaps there, but I mean, he's going to be the tight end that I think we're going to want. Obviously, Josh Oliver is going to be in play as well, but I do prefer Mundit here. Does project a little bit better for me. You're spending up. Trey McBride in that Seattle-Arizona game. You're stacking it up. He's obviously the one receiving option you would want over in Arizona. Evan Ingram, Jaguars do have something to play for. Jake Ferguson, the Cowboys. I like all the offensive pieces there. Brandon Cooks, Pollard, Dak, Lamb, Ferguson, all those guys are in play. Darren Waller with Tyrod Taylor. That's the only way I'd end up playing him. Gerald Everett's fine. Like, he's like a decent cash game option. I'm not like excited to play Gerald Everett, especially with Easton Stick at quarterback, but he has been targeting him. And then Chig, he's a beast of a man. It's a good matchup versus Jacksonville, and that's really all I got. And you guys know what I do with defenses. We scroll all the way down, and we look for the first viable one. And as you can see, none of these ones are really looking too great. Down here, we're all in the 20s for implied team total, but I do see the Chargers here at $2,000. 16.25 implied team total. I got them projected for 8.6 points. That's 3.1x value. I don't mind that at all. They're playing at home as well, and they got the KC backup. So the Chargers defense is fine at $2,000. Also, the Bengals are playing the Browns backups. They're also at home. 16.25 implied team total, 6-point favorites. I got them projected for 9.4, which is also 3.1x value. So I think those are probably the two defenses I would flock to. The Patriots versus the Jets is fine. They only have a 14-point total. They're also playing at home as favorites, 9.8 projection, which is not as good value-wise, but still 2.7x. So for me, the Patriots defense, the Bengals, and the Chargers would be the ones that I would be flocking to the most. But let's be honest, defense is very random, so just play whatever fits if you can't. All right, so let's finish this lineup off. Like I said, tight end, probably going cheap here. I would like Noah Gray or Johnny Mundit since I have Nick Mullins and a guy that's not really going to run the ball. So I prefer to have two pass catchers. I don't think we're going to be able to afford Jordan Addison. We can try to play around with it if we want. So if we go to flex here, Jordan Addison, I believe, is $5,300. Yeah, $5,300. So we'd have $4,000 left. We could play Noah Gray tight end if we wanted to go absolute bare minimum here. I mean, we could also afford probably something a little bit more expensive than that. So let's plug in a defense first. I prefer the Bengals the most, but the Chargers would be fine. We have $5,100 left for our tight end spot. If we happen to go that route, we could play Jake Ferguson, Darren Waller. I am fine with that route, but if we happen to go cheap at tight end with Johnny Mundit, get that double stacking option as well with Nick Mullins. That would give us a little bit more money. If we keep in the Bengals defense, we'd have $7,400 left, so that's some extra added flexibility. You can look at guys like Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf. Obviously, you're not playing Ayuk this week with DJ Moore, so plenty of options there. But overall, I think this roster construction looks pretty good. Again, don't copy and paste this. Use your own favorite plays, and you can use it in a similar fashion the way I do my builds for single entries and 3 maxes. But Nick Mullins paired with Justin Jefferson and Johnny Mundit. James Conner, Jordan Mason at running back, just based off their projection, point per dollar wise, looks really good to me. CeeDee Lamb, because I had to get a piece of that Cowboys offense and not match up for CeeDee Lamb here versus Washington. Christian Kirk, if he happens to be good to go, that is not confirmed or anything. There's obviously other guys you could take out if you wanted to play around with that, but it's not saying you have to play Christian Kirk. $3,000, it's really hard to pass up a guy that's probably going to be projected for 4x value in the Bengals defense and throw in whoever you want to at the flex position. But I like that build a lot and think it looks really solid. And like usual, just running the optimizer here to see who is populating the most as of right now. Keep in mind, it is Friday, so a lot of things can change. Obviously, Christian Kirk news would be a big one. But let's see who is popping here. I just really did some very bare minimum stack settings, a little bit of randomness on here, so they're not the exact projections. I don't think these are final by any means. But not surprised here, Christian Kirk. Like I said, I have him right around 12 points right now that he is playing. If he happens to be out, that's going to change things. I would imagine guys like Ronnie Bell, who's very cheap, would start populating more. Maybe more Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton at their cheap price points. Tony Pollard as well, likes him a ton. James Conner, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Nick Mullins, Dak Prescott. Like I said, I like those quarterbacks a lot, and those are the ones that project quite well. Jameer Gibbs, but again, it's kind of hard to decide what to do with the lines right now because we're not really sure how much they're going to push their starters. So that can be a bit of a wild card right now. Bengals and Chargers defense, what we talked about. Jordan Mason, I'm surprised, is not coming up as much. Maybe he just doesn't need the savings. But with putting Christian Kirk in there so much, maybe that's the reason why Jordan Mason isn't populating a ton. But I don't really think it's anything too surprising there with the players we talked about. Dallas, Jacksonville, Minnesota, Arizona, Cincinnati, Los Angeles, Detroit populating a lot. Tennessee, Jacksonville, Washington, Dallas. So again, also not surprised with these games either. So hopefully this gives you guys a good idea on who's going to be popular heading into the weekend, because I know it's only Friday, but we'll have a good idea, I think, heading into right now. With that being said, that's all I got for you guys this week. So I hope you did enjoy. And if you did, make sure you like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. If you have any questions, leave them down below. More than happy to answer them. I do appreciate everyone that stuck with me all season long, watched the videos, commented, leave a like. All do appreciate that very much. And that doesn't mean we're done for the season. We still have the playoffs coming up, but for the regular season, I do appreciate it. Wish you all the best of luck. I see you all next time.